most listened to show on the internet. Welcome to AEG. I am your host, JB, and I have Dalton with me this week.
What's up, everybody?
And I have Gustavo.
Hello, everyone.
And I have a very special guest, first time on the show, Yulana.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
First guest outside of the United States.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going international.
International.
You took the words out of my mouth, Dalton. We're going international, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It's really
Yeah.
a pleasure.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for being here, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We're really happy to have you.
So
we've been excited about it all week. So.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
absolutely.
Yeah, let's have some fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this week we're gonna touch on some Google Stadia news. Gustavo and I did an episode which will be actually up by the time you hear this episode, because I'm gonna have it up later today. Breaking the fourth wall here already. But we're also gonna be talking about some the Nintendo did a direct for the Nindies stuff, so their indie games that they do. We're gonna be talking about Bethesda. Kind of highlighted what their E3 showcase is going to somewhat center around. And then in honor of our guest, we're actually going to be doing a Final Fantasy centered topic, asking her some questions, what her favorite stuff is of Final Fantasy, and possibly where it's going to go from here. So
Yeah.
Sounds great.
So
other than Jeff butchering that last part, that's host responsibility. He's got a lot of responsibility.
Yes. But I know, like, Gustavo and I pretty much told our entire thoughts on Google Stadia. So I know Dalton and Yulana, what do you guys think of it?
Man, I have mixed feelings because in one hand I'm really old school. I prefer old physical copies on the consoles, and this is obviously not that. This is a streaming service.
Yeah, it's not even,
No
you
bots.
literally do not even own what you're playing, essentially.
Yeah.
You own a
Subscription,
license to
probably.
play it.
Yeah.
Basically.
So basically, yeah. I mean, we this isn't the first time we've seen this. We saw it with PlayStation Now, kinda. I mean, it's a similar thing here, but this looks like it's going to be on a whole nother level, and could, if they don't fumble it, be the future of gaming.
Yeah, and you actually, I think you touched on something that Goose and I didn't really go into too much detail on, was the physical ownership part of it. I mean, we talked about, the tech and subscription and pricing and all that kind of stuff, but the fact that you are not physically owning your games, and I know a lot of games media kind of covered this and talked about, how they're a little worried that, if you don't have an internet connection, or if something happens and they can't verify those licenses, this tech is basically dead in the water.
That's right.
It's not like you can't just, I don't have, internet right now, but I'll go put my disc in of this game that I want to play and still be able to play it like what we have now with these modern consoles.
Right, it's just the future. I mean, Dalton touched on it. I mean, I'm digital on music. I'm digital with movies. I'm digital with comics. I don't see myself going fully digital with games, at least just yet.
You like your steelbooks way too much?
Yeah, I do. I love my steelbooks way too much, but we'll see. We'll see what Google will make of it. It's cool that we have basically a new challenger stepping up in the gaming arena, and we'll see what they'll bring to the table. On the show, we touched on it a little bit, but I'm really looking forward to see their first party exclusives, and looking forward to play those whenever those come out or whenever those are announced. But we'll see.
With Jade Raymond being part of the first party studio.
Yeah, her being the head.
That was a big get. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on this, Yulana? Anything to add?
Well, I'm also old school. I love my, hard copies. I like to just sort of have the game there, and also, like, makes you wonder what happens if licenses are revoked. Can you actually play the old games? On the that would be there and then would disappear. So it's all of these concerns. So, but I think maybe the younger audience would really respond to this, because everything seems to be going that way. Everything is digital, like Gustavo mentions, the books, the comics, all of that is now Kindle and all the rest of it. But for games, I don't know. I will be left behind.
I mean,
I'll be right there with you.
Yeah, right. Like, I think I'm the only one of this, this group that does purchase my games almost wholly digitally. On PS4, not as much on Xbox, because I I can't game share on there. The main reason I do it on PS4 is I can game share with my friend, and we split the cost of a lot of the games and stuff like that. But yeah, on Xbox, I end up buying the physical copy just because I have ways that I can get those games a little bit cheaper in the long run with Xbox or Best Buy's Gamers Club and stuff like that. So. But I don't mind the digital only, but yes, there have been times like my power's gone out, my internet's not been working, and I literally am SOL. I can't play any of my games because they are, the license can't be verified.
Only if your PS4 is not set to your primary console.
Exactly.
If it is set to your primary console, you can.
Which, because of game sharing, though, I can't do that.
It's in your buddies, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very unique situation for me. Yeah, Goose, what's up?
Actually, I've got a question for Ulana. Ulana, would you be worried as somebody who may or may not use Google Stadia? Like, are there data caps over in the UK? Like, how's the internet infrastructure? Would you worry about your power going out? Like, is that an issue that you guys would face across the pond?
Hopefully not. One would hope that we are now quite advanced, so when it comes to internet that you wouldn't face those issues, but you never know. And also, so that basically means that the three of us, if the power went out, the three of us will be working away on our backlogs while the digital people will be just thrashing around and not being able to do anything, so it's fun. But yes, hopefully I'm thinking that also the good thing that can come off from it, because this is kind of new thing, right? So somebody comes up with something new, other companies look at it, how can we make it better, make it work better, and then something new is born, so it's just the beginning, like the same, like when VR came out, right? So it's kind of like the same. At first it's a bit clunky, this, that, and the other, but then it's better and better. So it will be interesting to see how it develops,
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it will be really, really good.
Yeah.
Right, and this is different than digital only too, because digital you buy your games and you download it. This is strictly a streaming service, I believe, right? So there is no downloading these games. So if you don't have internet and that's your only gaming, the only access to gaming you have, you're fucked for the day, or however long. So I don't know, man. And we're just now getting 5G rolling out here in the United States. I don't know how it is over there, but
it's the same. So it's still
a lot of people aren't going to have fast enough internet for this.
Yeah.
So I played on PS Now, and that is, if you don't have fast internet, even playing an older game, it sucks. It skips, frames drop all the time. It just
the pixelated nature of it and everything. Yeah.
It goes back to maybe it being a little bit ahead of its time. Especially because, if you're not in a city, you probably don't have the internet to support something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you and I, Dalton, we're in rural Ohio, so, I mean, there's definitely a possibility that our internet capabilities won't be up to par for possibly even a while. I mean, I have decent internet where I'm at now, but I know that, with the Google, like the Google Fiber and stuff like that and all that stuff, fiber internet, it's definitely better in major cities and stuff like that too. So.
I think Ulana made a great point where, hey, this could springboard into something even greater, and I think in essence this is sort of like the product of that, because I think of services like PlayStation Now, I think of services like OnLive, Gaikai before Sony bought them, and I'm like, well, Microsoft and Google are now throwing their they're like, hey, we're going to be part of this now. We're going to make an effort to make sure that this works out. And maybe hopefully they do succeed where those others have failed. I'm not saying that PlayStation Now is a failure, because it isn't, but it's not as touted or hyped as something like Google Stadia or Microsoft's xCloud, whatever that's going to be.
Absolutely.
And if any companies can do it, it's Google and Microsoft. They've got the cash to throw around. So
yeah.
And the tech to back it up.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, we'll see where Stadia goes from here. But speaking of digital games, Nintendo did their Direct and talked about a bunch of Nindies, they call them, digital games, smaller titles. The biggest one being Cuphead is now going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch, which is actually pretty darn cool. I never played it because I've heard it's the Dark Souls of platformers.
It is the Dark Souls of platforms. I can attest to this.
But it's very cool that the people that may only have a Switch are now able to take advantage of that game.
Yeah,
and being
so you
able
can
to
break
play
your
it.
whole console instead of
Yeah,
just a
snap
controller.
your Switch in half.
But I think more importantly than that was the tone and tenor, because I literally just watched the Nindies before starting the show, and it was amazing to see Nintendo say, hey, working with Microsoft and our friends over at Microsoft. I'm like, man, they just seem so chummy, they seem so
Yeah.
friendly, so that was a really good get for Nintendo.
It's almost like they're sticking it to Sony.
Yeah, it sort of feels like it a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But
There's
this isn't the first time we've seen them work together either. So
And
right.
it certainly won't be the last. And in
No.
addition to Cuphead, one of the games that got me really excited is this game called Rad by Double Fine Studios.
Double Fine. That's
Yeah,
caught
Tim
my
Schafer's.
attention.
Yeah, it looks super cool, man. It's like I think they called it an action roguelike.
Yeah.
In a post-apocalyptic wasteland type
Yep.
deal. It's being published by Bandai Namco, and man, that looks so
Which-
cool. It looks so rad.
I see what you did there. But no, that was a very weird pairing, like Double Fine and Bandai Namco. Not two companies I would ever think to work together, but very cool. Like, yeah, and I think that one, I don't believe that one is exclusive to Nintendo.
I
I
don't
want to
know.
say I read somewhere else that it's coming to PS4 and possibly Xbox One, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I would assume so. Just the economics of how gaming the industry works today, I could totally see them coming to different platforms, even if it's a timed exclusive
Right.
to the Switch. But you're totally right. I agree with you on me not seeing Double Fine team up with Bandai. But one of the things about Double Fine is that they're survivors, man. They're an indie studio. They've done Kickstarter. They've done GoFundMe's. They find a way to crank out games and put themselves in a position to keep making games, and so they don't go out of business.
Right.
Look forward to that.
The other one that I was actually really excited that they showed off, I believe it was at last E3, was called My Friend Pedro, which is like it's like Gun Kata,
Yeah,
side scroller.
I had a check, and I had a look at that game actually. Yeah, there is nothing friendly about Pedro.
Nope.
That's for sure. It was like a bloodbath when I looked at it. But I'm sure it's a funny game. Yeah, it's a fun game to play.
Yeah, it's very fast action, like 2D side
Yes.
scroller, shooting, cutting people up, and all sorts
Yes.
of fun stuff. Just something fun that looks a little different from what you genuinely think about when you hear Nintendo.
There's another one that's coming out
Yes.
because Devolver Digital is getting into the action when it comes to the indies. They got a couple of games, but one of the ones that I'm really looking forward to, which I saw back in 2016 during Kind of Funny's GDC little show that they did, is Katana Zero, and it's a 2D action platformer, and it comes out April 18th.
Yeah, so it's right around the corner.
It's right around the corner, man. I think the name of the studio is called ASCII. I think it's just one guy or two guys. It's like they share everything. They have like a sound guy, and then there's this other dude who just does the graphics and the coding, and he basically does everything, which is why it's taken so long for this game to come out. And I'll be picking it up on Switch day one, but I'm like, man, I hope this comes out to PS4 because I want some of those sweet trophies.
The other big one that they announced that was kind of out of nowhere, nobody really saw. We actually talked about it in the pre-show, but Cadence of Hyrule, which is from I don't know the name of the company, but it's the same people that did Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is like a rhythm battle game. But it is that style of game, but set in Hyrule. They showed Link, they showed Zelda, those Legend of Zelda characters, which I think is really, really cool, and something different, using those assets. What are you guys' thoughts on that one?
I think it looks pretty good.
All right.
That's
We're
right.
super excited for that one.
Yay! Spin-offs.
Yeah.
No, you just get over that kind of stuff after a while, man. I don't know. I have a hard time getting too excited for a spin-off of anything, like whether it be a TV show or a movie or what. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you like. I understand like having wanting the core. Wanting to know the core story as opposed to this offshoot kind of thing.
Actually, I'll pose this question to Ilana. Before we started the show, you were mentioning how you didn't really have the opportunity to play any of the Zelda games. But
I know.
would you want to play? Would you want your Zelda introduction to be a spin-off like this, or would you rather wait to actually play a Zelda proper?
I think I would rather play my Zelda proper. If I ever went in to play these games, I would just want to start from the beginning and actually, understand the world, see what's going on. Because otherwise you don't have any, because, the spin-offs are fun when you have a bond with the characters, right? So for example, and also another thing is you then have to adjust your expectations. So you never go to play a spin-off with the same mindset as you would the main game, isn't it? So kind of like, you have to go a bit easy on spin-offs, but it's just a sort of extra. So if you really, really love Zelda environment, spin-off is just something, we'll spend more time in whatever with those same
world.
characters,
Yeah.
So it's not always bad, I've got also a couple of my own here, some of the franchises, and I've got also spin-offs, and it's just because some of them are fun, so I don't go with the big idea, to play them, but it's just kind of lighthearted fun.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And just one more that I really want to bring up because I think
for
me, when I saw the Nindies, this one spoke to me the most. It's called Red Lantern, and the art style reminded me of Firewatch, Ali Moss's Firewatch.
Ooh, okay.
Over at Campo Santo.
Yeah, you have my attention. That was one of my favorite games.
I feel stupid because I don't know the name of the developer, although I saw it on the Nindy showcase. But it's really cool. It's you're playing as this girl. I don't know her name, and her goal, like she feels like she's like a loser, and she wants to do something to like just jumpstart her life. So she goes out to Alaska. She gets some dogs. She gets a sled, and she wants to be part of the Alaskan Iditarod race. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. And it looks so cool. Like you have to heal the dogs, you have to heal yourself, I think it has like some survival type elements. You're out in the wilderness. I was like, man, I think the voice actress, I don't know if it's true, but I think it's Ashley Birch who played Aloy, and who's also from what's those games that you like, Jeff? Those downloadable games. Something Into the Storm, is it? Life is Strange. Life is Strange. There it is. Life is Strange. Yeah. So I think
sound it out.
I think Ashley Birch is the voice actress. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it sounds like her. Looks so
Timberline
cool.
Studio.
I think it is. I think you're right. Yeah, it is Timberline Studio because I think they showed the game director. They showed it was a female game director up on the Nindy showcase. So I think you are correct. Looks so cool.
Yeah, it does look interesting.
Absolutely. But I mean, other than that, like I'll be honest. It was a good good showcase for the Nindies, but that like I was more excited when you said like, oh, there's a Nintendo Direct on this week. I was like, oh sweet, we'll get something maybe about Animal Crossing or something big for the Switch, but
more Pokemon shit.
Yeah, I mean, which is it's fine that Nintendo is widening their their palette of games and stuff like that, but I wasn't when I saw that it was indie games. I wasn't as excited.
Okay, I can see that. It turned out to be a wasteland of Nindies.
Yeah. God damn it.
And speaking of wastelands,
wow.
Speaking of apocalypse,
wow. Go for it. You built it up. You take that segue.
We got next up is Bethesda. They're gonna do their third consecutive E3 showcase. I thought I handed that assist to Jeff, hoping that he'd slam it down.
No.
We all knew where you were going with it.
Wasn't touching that one.
Yeah. So it's their third. I think it's their third in a row. I believe I could be incorrect.
Yeah,
saving a little face maybe.
Yeah, they officially announced it. They're officially doing one. I think it's the same time as the last ones. It'd be Sunday night of E3 week. But yeah, what do
you guys think about this? I mean, what are they going to show besides Rage, which will come out like a month before?
Yeah, they'll probably like show off like, oh, Rage is so and so sold so million copies, and maybe they'll show out like an expansion or like the first DLC pack for Rage or something like that. And then obviously they're going to show Doom Eternal. I think is their big. That's their tentpole fall game for sure.
I think we're gonna get a title reveal for The Elder Scrolls 6. I don't know if they're gonna show off too much more than they did last year. But I think we get a title reveal at least letting us know like, hey, The Elder Scrolls 6, Argonia or wherever it's gonna be.
I'm
That's-
hoping.
What about Starfield, dude?
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I think the last thing we see is a gameplay reveal of Starfield. I think we're gonna
that's
see
big.
gameplay. We
Yeah.
have to at this point. They have to with. I mean, I understand it's not their whole thing, but with the debacle that was Fallout 76,
That's
I
another
think
thing too.
need
They may outline that a little.
I
bit
think
better,
they're gonna,
too.
yeah, I think they're gonna show like where the progress they made and where they go from here with that game. But they need to save a little face. I mean, no, it's not their whole company is built around Fallout 76. Like, yes, they have a lot of other titles.
They're a publisher,
a
as
lot
well
of
as a
great,
developer.
lot of great titles. But I think they're gonna need to pull something big at the end.
They need to come out and say, hey, we screwed up, right? There needs to be like a little bit of an apology tour, in my opinion. And it's, hey, we screwed up. This is what we've got coming. We've got a lot of great content coming for Fallout 76. We haven't given up. Then what they need to do is show off Wolfenstein Youngblood, because I'm looking forward to that.
I forgot that was supposed to come out in the spring, wasn't it?
I don't know whether they ever announced a date for it, although they did show a trailer.
Yeah.
And just those two twins, I'm like, man, I want to play as one of those twins, dude.
It's Wolfenstein. I freaking love those games.
And then finally, they need to show. You're right. They need to show Doom Eternal. And again, this isn't prediction season because we're nowhere close to that.
We're not close yet.
But I think that I'm looking at their studios and I'm like, Tango Gameworks hasn't put out a game like in a year and a half.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe they're working on the Evil Within 3. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't know.
Because Evil Within 2 was what, fall of 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Evil Within, the first one, I believe, was fall of 2014. So there was a 3-year period in between. So there may be a three-year period in between now, but we'll see. We'll see what Tango's up to.
All right. Any thoughts on this, Ilana? I know we've got obviously Bethesda coming to E3 again for a third year is pretty big. So I don't know if you're a Bethesda fan or not, but
Well, yeah, I guess that they have to show something. They coming in. I mean, you mentioned there that Elder Scrolls 6, didn't you?
Yeah.
Whatever. So that could potentially be interesting. However, it mostly will be perhaps online. That one, if I'm
I
correct.
hope not. I don't
think so.
I don't think
Well,
so.
I hope not. But originally, I think it was meant to be only online, or am I just making this up? But I may be just making this up. But I know that this would be something to look, to have a kind of look forward to see what they come up with, because we also would like to see something new, don't we, from the Elder Scrolls and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the botched Fallout 76, absolutely. And I don't think they'll risk making Elder Scrolls 6 all online only especially after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, taking a beloved franchise, a beloved offline single-player franchise, and turning it into that would be
disaster.
catfish. Yeah, exactly.
And I think they have ESO. I think ESO fits that. I think fits that mold.
That's their mold. Yeah, that's their.
And it's fairly successful too. ESO is still going pretty strong. So.
I mean, yeah, they got a new expansion coming out in like a month or 2 months. So.
Yeah. So.
There we go.
So.
Yeah, so Bethesda's got to save a little face. I think they've already laid an outline out for Fallout 76, which credit to Bethesda for not giving. Obviously, they don't want to give up and lose money, but seriously, credit to them for communicating with their fans and
tight, yeah.
Yeah. So, absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see. But yeah.
All we can really do is speculate on this topic.
Right.
Don't really have any
until it gets
evidence.
a little closer. We might get some leaks and possibly have an idea of what they're going to be talking about. Because I mean, we've had that every year with E3. We always somewhat find out what's going to be talked about before it's actually talked about. So.
Yay, internet.
Yeah. But that brings us to our main topic, which, because of Ilana, is Final Fantasy.
Hey.
Yeah.
All right, this is yours right here. This is your is your expertise area. So
I would say
take
it away. Give us your thoughts. Why is it your favorite franchise? What about it? Is so lovable to you? And what drew you in? How did you start?
Ulana, I can serve as your foil because I know nothing about Final Fantasy, so just go ahead.
Oh my gosh, really? That's interesting. Yes,
I
that's
know,
interesting.
yeah.
You're on my hit list now. That's nice.
Yeah, we don't like him much either.
No. We have to sort this out. No, yeah. So it's stories. I think mainly it's because of stories. So sort of games, especially back in the day when they used to come Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 2. All of these games. There were no games that would be so rich in story at the time. Now people often would say, oh, those earlier games are weak, but that's because, you can't judge them. You need to judge them from the perspective of time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
that's what I
Absolutely.
mean. Yeah. So you don't take something like Final Fantasy 4 and then compare it to 15. It's just, it won't work.
Not fair. Yeah.
That's what I mean. And it was just like at the time, it was something else. It was just full of this, I don't know, feelings, and you were really involved. It was almost like watching a film that you take active part in, or reading a book or whatever. So yeah. But my first experience with Final Fantasy was with Final Fantasy 8. So it's
Love 8.
Aha.
Super underrated.
That's it. Yeah, it has been my most favorite. It's still to this day. Just nothing can sort of compare to me.
Real quick, you
yeah.
said 8 is your favorite?
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, if you listen to this episode, you got another one.
Yeah.
8, my buddy Joe, 8 is his all-time favorite game. He's got the Griever tattooed right here on his forearm. Yeah, so Joe, if you're listening, man, you got a fan.
Yep.
Okay, Joe, so you're going on my other list.
Yep.
So yeah, but 8 was the first game that I bought with my own money, and at the time it was, I had a PS1 console and no internet, so it wasn't something like I could go and purchase it online, my copy would arrive. It was more like going to the market, and looking for the copy. And I remember I was very unlucky because I brought the copy home, and it's just cut out pretty much on the beginning. It's cutscene because that's what you get with discs, that you would get those little marks on them, and then they would sort of freeze.
Oh no.
So yeah, and I was just so disappointed. I couldn't believe it. It was just at the beginning when the water was going, and I was like, what? It was just like 30 seconds, and all that anticipation. But yeah, so I had to replace the disc, but then when eventually I got the right copy that worked, it was just, that's it. It was just like adventure of my lifetime, So the characters, the story, the graphics as well, because the cutscenes were just so amazing. They just kind of, Square Enix at the time. So it was Squaresoft at the time. I think
Squaresoft.
Yeah, yep. Squaresoft. They kind of like ruled with those. They were so well done. So it was like wow when you watch them. And I remember the ending. The ending was I was unable to defeat the final boss, and I was like so frustrated because imagine I went all this way without understanding anything about junction system. So I have no idea even how I got to the very end without junctioning any magic. So it's been magic in its own right, So I kind of course, I was unable to defeat the final boss, and I wrote to the magazine, and I was like, "You never publish anything from fans." I said, "You have to tell me how to defeat and they featured me in the magazine, and literally said to me, "Well, you have to just pound Arthur," and I'm just like, "Well, thanks for that advice," and so much for being published in the magazine. But yeah, so. And I remember this was like unforgettable for me because I was in my room. It was midnight. I could hear my mother sort of wandering around in the other part of the house. And I knew that at any moment she can burst in and she would say to me, "Turn this off, whatever, it's midnight, school tomorrow, whatnot." And then, of course, so you then sort of sit and then I've completed the game and my brother was asleep and I sort of shook him from sleep. I said, "Oh my God, look at this, I said, "I think I'm here, and this whole, like the final movie, it was just like, wow, wow." And I think because of those experiences, it's just stayed with me like this. There was nothing like that. No other game touched me in the same way, Yeah, although I shed a tear or two playing Metal Gear Solid 1 as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was also
That's
story.
one of my favorite franchises.
I'm so happy that you mentioned Metal Gear Solid because everything that you just described was what Metal Gear Solid was for me.
Same here.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's another one. Yeah, beautiful, absolutely wonderful. Because that's the mean, and this is why it's because we, go back again and again to stories, right?
Yep.
Yep.
This is what we're talking about. We don't say, oh yeah, I loved it because it was just this junctioning system that was great or whatever.
Right.
Well, wasn't great, quite frankly, but. Yeah, so it's just a story, Music is another thing. It's just Final Fantasy music, it's just beloved, in the world.
Absolutely, especially with Nobuo Uematsu or whatever Uematsu.
Yes,
I'm not
right.
Japanese, I can't.
No,
But,
Uematsu. Yes, that's the guy.
Yeah, music in most games is a lot of like this is not anything related to Final Fantasy, but I've been going back and playing the Halo games again, and just the music makes those games just up another level. And I know like certain Final Fantasy games, you can listen to the soundtrack outside of the game and still just picture everything, and it's that
every
that
time
relation.
I hear To Xanarkin, man, I'm telling you that the opening song for Final Fantasy X. Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Actually, this is something that I can relate to because I kind of lied. I have played one Final Fantasy to completion, and that's the PSP game Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. And
Woohoo!
yeah, and every time that you hear One Winged Angel, I mean, you guys have a different recollection of it through Final Fantasy VII, but mine's is just of Genesis and then Geo and Sephiroth facing off against each other in that simulation. And whenever I hear that song, it just brings me to that. I'm like, man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
This song, and also to be honest, Crisis Core soundtrack is just mint.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, it's so good.
Like the ending of this game. It's just like after the end, I watched the ending and I was just like wondering for at least 2 to 3 days trying to get over this, and I was like thinking, come on, this is just a game. But no, because just at the end it kicks off the Japanese song as well. Yeah, why she's singing, and the cloud is coming. He comes out and he just sort of and the moment he says like, Zach, and you think, oh God,
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
it's terrible.
It's really good.
It just breaks your heart. You think, what's going on?
I'm so glad they did a prequel to 7 too. That was one game that definitely deserved a prequel, especially with the backstory. If you play 7, it gets a little confusing, but it's nice to have that backstory. I'm glad they did the prequel.
Yes, especially that Zack kind of, when you think about it, played a massive major role. Yeah, because in 7 is all based on this cloud is being a little bit all over the place because of this encounter with Zack. So when you think about it, it shapes him. As a person.
As a person, yeah, it's something that Yeah, when you, I mean, I haven't played Final Fantasy VII, but I imagine that if I were to play it, I'd have a different recollection of who and how important Zack was to Cloud.
Cloud, yeah, extremely.
Yep,
extremely.
And I think you will find that you will perhaps enjoy it a little bit more that way because you don't know the original, because there is a little bit like inconsistencies, because obviously that's natural, but so you may find that if the remake eventually comes out, you will enjoy it more, so we will be looking for plot holes or look this, whatever. You will be just playing it with a different point of view, so it's really cool. It's really good.
So speaking of Final Fantasy VII, what are your thoughts on them doing the remake of it?
I wish they'd remake
because that's it. Yeah, let's talk about that.
I was gonna say, I honestly think, and this is kind of something I've always noticed. They've re-released those core, PS1 well-known Final Fantasies multiple times.
And they're doing it again.
And they're doing
Switch.
it. They're doing it again on
with
the
the
Switch.
exception of 8. They're not releasing 8.
8 has not been re-released. It wasn't re-released except on the PS3. That was the
Nintendo,
only one that they did.
You're now on Ulana's list.
Right.
No good.
Well, that's it. The list is growing. There's a few of them now, and
they haven't even released.
Finding their way in on it.
Yeah. Because they haven't even released 8 on the PS4, and they released 7 and 9 on the PS4.
Yeah, I believe 8 is on the Vita.
I think
you can get it on the Vita, I think, with the PS1 Classics thing, but it's it's not. Yeah.
It's basically the thing that really annoys me.
It's on PC.
Well,
it is on PC.
Yeah, it's PC. But the thing that really annoys me about this situation is that clearly there is a lot of fans, of 8, and we sort of, and I'm sure that everybody would just want to know, look, if you're not going to do anything with this game, just let us know and we will just leave it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of like, I wish I knew, like, what's the reason why the 8 is this hush, let's not talk about it, or let's not just mention it, whatever. And I wish I just kind of, I would know why that is, because there is no reason really. It's done very well back in the day, so there is not really a reason to just sort of push, kind of leave it out. But
Actually, I have a question real quick.
Oh.
This is for all the folks who've played 8. Is it remembered fondly because of the fact that it came after such a big one in 7, or is it a good game in its own right, independent of how big 7 was?
Actually, that's a great question, Gus, because 7 is obviously probably the most popular Final Fantasy. It was the first one to come to the PS1.
For a lot of people, it's not the best, but it's the most
It's
recognized
not the best
one.
And I'm going to piss a lot of fanboys off here, but 7, I love it. As much as I love it, it is highly overrated. It's not as good as people make it out to be. A lot of it is probably because it was their first Final Fantasy game they completed.
3D.
Whatever it was. First 3D title, yes, thank you. So, yeah, 7 is obviously the most popular. 8 is one of the least popular, to be honest with you. No matter how much you love 8, it's one of the least popular Final Fantasies. It's of the 3 that came out on the PS1, 7, 8, and 9, it is definitely the least favorite of the 3. So,
yes.
collectively, so... Yeah, so I would say 8 is the better game. A lot of people didn't like the junction system, which I loved it, but...
Yeah. You didn't have to grind. First of all, you didn't have to grind. You have to be very strategic. So it's very more like, rather than moan about it, you have to basically put your sort of thinking cap on and think, okay, so what am I going to do in this situation? Then you basically can mold your team the way you want it. You don't need to have to sit here in this dungeon because I get 450 XP for killing that particular beast. You didn't have to sit in one spot and keep, at it because you wanted to level up your stats. You could actually think, okay, I need this amount of spells. I'm going to go and draw some or whatever, create something. But, it's kind of, also I loved it because for the first time, characters looked like people. That's what I really liked about it. Like they actually were people, and they had this like thing that you could see the 3 of them sort of running together, made it like, oh yeah, we are
just blew your mind at the time.
Yeah, and in this together, and I think that so it depends. I think it very much depends because there's a lot of nostalgia attached to it. So if you started your adventure with 7, it's gonna be very nostalgic, so you, of course, 7 is gonna be in your heart, like same for me, like 8. I'm sure there's a lot of, you can find a lot of.
10 is for me.
10 is for you, and it's depending what was your introduction to this. But in reality, they're all amazing, they're all awesome considering, so yeah, so it's.
And I'll be the first to admit, like 10 is my favorite game ever, but I know there's a lot of nostalgia with that. Like, I love 10. The first time I played it, I cried like a baby. I was actually 10 years old when it came out. That's perfect. But I loved it, man. That story stuck with me, and it still has. Like to this day, I just finished playing through it again for the probably 15th time, I'm sure. But
you do say a lot that it should be taught in schools.
I do. I stand by that. They should teach that in schools. They should get rid of American history or whatever, and teach Final Fantasy X.
Meaning, like, can you expand on that? I mean, what do you mean? Teach in school? Like,
well, you could teach the story itself, or you could make everybody play the game. That's fine. Make everybody play through the game. You don't have to play through 10 too, because, but yeah, make them all play through the game and
I hear
learn the story.
It could totally be like, like at least here, I can't speak for the UK, but at least here in the US, like once you graduate high school, there's this expected list of books that you should have read, Catcher in the Rye and other, I can't think, what is that one? Like, I forgot. There's a whole bunch of books that, as high schoolers, once you finish, you should have read by then. And I'm pretty sure that I don't think I've read fix the list, but yeah, I think it'd be cool if they were to do something like that with the games. Like, hey, once you graduate high school, these kind of games. So that's something, he's joking around, but there could be some practicality to it.
I think the nice thing about 10 was really, like, that really resonated with me personally, was that it kind of had this, like the main character. So I call him Tidus, but I know that others call him Tidus, whatever. But you know,
Tidus is the correct pronunciation.
Tidus, I know,
hate
because
to admit it.
that's it. Yeah, Tidus, I think it's the correct one. Yeah, but you know, it's again, if it's Tidus or Tidus, you know, it's your own Tidus. You call him what you want. But you know, so it kind of he's referred to by his father in the game. You know, he was crybaby, this, that, and the other. You know, it's like, so first of all, we had this character who is like a guy, but he's like really emotional, you know, and he's just like getting sad and this and
Character
that.
development was
It's
amazing.
you know,
Yeah.
like, of course, so what that you're a crybaby or whatever, you know, who cares? It kind of like, it's all normal, and you know, never cry again, whatever, all of that stuff can go in the bin, you know. So it's sort of, I really love that. I really loved the, you know, the relationship between the characters. You know, you had the development for each, and everybody had their own, and the main story, you know, the fact is that we sort of heading to the end and we're expecting one thing, and then slowly we're learning that there is something else entirely going on.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then you shift, like, so now we're not worried about her, but we're worried about him, and oh my gosh, by the time you finish it, it's all just gone. You know, it's just
Yeah.
like you're sitting broken on the couch and thinking, well, this is over.
It did too. Like when I saw that ending for the first time, I just like sat there. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, so
It's very, and even now, because you know, I was just watching the that moment before you arrive to Zanarkand, and he picks up the sphere and he listens to the goodbyes, right? And she sort of recorded all these goodbyes, and I was sitting there misty-eyed. You know, I've heard those goodbyes numerous times before, but every time it hits you the same. And now, you know, when you think about it, it's like how many other games would stick with you, and how many other games you would remember those kind of moments, like really recall them clearly.
I'm
Right.
trying
know?
to talk these two into playing that game. Jeff has never finished it
I have
because he
not.
doesn't finish games, and then Gus has never played it.
Okay.
10.
Yeah.
I have a actually pretty cool story about 10, but I'm not gonna dump on it, I promise. But so I don't know whether they do this in the UK. I'm pretty sure they do, but here in the States we have like take your kid to work day.
Yeah.
And my mom, she took me to work out in her office in the city. And I remember for lunch, she was like, "Oh, what do you want?" I was like, "I want McDonald's and I want a game." And I remember we went to Toys R Us, and back then it was when I didn't know anything about games. I just bought them based on how cool the cover was.
Yeah.
And I saw this thing that said Final Fantasy X. And I see this guy with like this blonde hair, and he's staring up at the sky,
Holding
and he's
a
like
sword.
in water, holding a sword. And I'm like, man, that looks cool. And I bought it, and I played it home, and I couldn't get into it. I was like, oh.
Oh, what a disappointment! Like,
It was probably too much game for you.
well, the thing, you know,
Yikes. All right.
to be honest, it's a hard one. It depends. For example, if you, I don't know what types of games, like, you know, when you think about it, if you are into a game like Metal Gear Solid, it's quite a
Yeah.
powerful shift to go
Yeah.
into something when you have to grind and go and you know, turn-based.
Especially, yeah,
game.
the turn base is
Yeah,
the big
you have
thing.
to know what you're getting into with
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
games for sure.
It's cheap. Ulana makes a great point. Like, and the guys know this about me. Like, JRPGs are like my biggest weakness when it comes to games,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I just didn't grow up playing them. I don't have anything against them. I just didn't grow up
Right.
playing them. It wasn't part of my vocabulary when it came to games.
I played a lot when I was younger, but I don't play them as much now.
I mean, I love Pokemon, but I don't really count that as a JRPG in that vein.
No.
Also many hours. You have they require also a big commitment,
Yeah.
many hours. Okay, so if you want to go exploring and this and that, like, you know, you have to basically commit. So I like so Resident Evil games, for example, I like them for the fact that, you know, to beat the game you need at least like maybe 8 hours.
Yeah.
10 is like absolute max.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is nice, you know, to know
It
that
is.
Yep.
you've got 10 hours, okay, I can manage this. But when you walk into something like Final Fantasy, you know, some of them like would take 80 plus, okay,
Right.
if you
Yeah.
want to
You know you're
do
putting.
side quests and things like that. So I think a lot of people are also put off by maybe that commitment. They can't say, oh, I can't be bothered with, you know, investing that amount of time at the moment.
Yeah.
And then the right moment never arrives. But I think it's like, so I think like this. So we can work with Gus and we can definitely put him straight. But I think the problem is, you know, Jeff, if he doesn't finish games.
I mean, I finish games, but I'm more like what you're talking about, where I have, you know, the games I try
Time
to
is a
finish are
commodity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the games I try to finish are those 8 to 10 hour experiences. And I was gonna say this on the show anyway before this topic was even brought up, but I am making it a point to purchase Final Fantasy X for the Xbox One when it comes out next month, and I am going to play it
Look
to
at
completion.
Nice.
Oh, and he said it on air, so
Yep.
that's it.
So yeah, you can the internet can ridicule me if I don't do it.
I'm
That's
sure
it.
they will.
Yes,
They might ridicule you anyway.
I'll say you're gonna ridicule me regardless. So.
We got his back though. We got his back.
Yeah.
Yes. We will send him. We will send him to the Thunder Plains, and we will set him a challenge of avoiding 200 hits.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, that's where we're gonna start him off.
I have the platinum for the PS4, or I guess it's all a shared trophy. So I platinum Final Fantasy X and dodging 200 lightning bolts. That
You
was
did?
Fun. Oh yeah, I
Wow.
have the platinum trophy on my.
Oh
my
my
PS.
lord! Oh no, this is something else. Yeah. Oh, at the moment, I'm trying to do that, but I need to get the no encounter item.
Oh
And-
yeah, you have to,
yes.
and then you go to that little hole.
And that's it exactly. And I didn't know this little trick, but the thing is, I can't. I'm chasing ghosts, but they don't very low drop rate. So I guess I have to.
Grind it out.
Yep.
This is it's
If you have any questions, feel free to message anytime. I will gladly walk you through it. That's my a favorite game. I platinumed it 2-3 years ago now. So.
Well,
Yeah.
this is it, because I think that some people recommend to go into the monster arena, isn't it? Catch the monster and then fight him over and over for the item. But the thing is that my monster arena is like I caught the ghost, but I can't find him anywhere in that monster, whatever, So much for catching the ghost. But hey, yeah. So that's fun, So it would be great.
Any other questions you guys want to ask?
I did. I've got maybe probably one last more, and this is directed to the Final Fantasy fans. So, just talking about Square Enix in particular, I've noticed that you guys have been talking about like their glory days, their heyday with Final Fantasy VII. The Final Fantasy, the SquareSoft days before the merger, correct? But once they got into the PS3 and 360 generation, they hit a little bit of a speed bump. They did put out games, right? Final Fantasy 13. They put out Blue Dragon, Last Remnant. They put out all these JRPGs out, but a lot of them weren't as popular as what you got with Final Fantasy 7 and 9 and all those. Like, what do you guys feel about that? Like, what do you think contributed to them not putting out the same quality of JRPG that they did back in the past?
I mean, my personal thing is the length of development. Look how long some of these games have been in development, and times change and people's tastes change. Like, I'm not saying that. I mean, yeah, obviously we all we're all Final Fantasy fans, and I finished 15. Like, I loved it, but again, I haven't played the DLC either. But how long that game was in development for. It started off as a spin-off for 13, which was last generation, fairly early, or
the Nova Crystallis.
it was like mid last generation. And I just think that the times change enough that the fan base wants more return on these franchises they love, as opposed to these big epics that take so long to develop.
And that's the thing too is with 13, for example. Actually, it started with 12. They changed a lot with 12, and it's something that fans of long-running series don't like. It's change, right? So 12, they changed up the whole battle formula. It didn't do any turn-based, no ATB, nothing. So I think that put fans off. And then 13 itself, I'm not a huge fan of 13, any of them, but
I like that first one, but I didn't play.
Yeah, I'm playing through the first one right now. But yeah, I think it's just a lot of it's changed. They move forward. Final Fantasy 15 is the biggest example, and I loved 15. I thought it was amazing. The story was a lot of, I wouldn't say holes, but a lot of stuff they just don't explain in the story, which is kind of annoying. But
that theme song, Vals this something, I don't know what it's called, but it's super cool, dude. Vals di Fantastica. That's what it's called.
I think a lot of it has to do with change. Go ahead.
That's yeah. I was just wanted to say the soundtrack was very good. Yeah, in the 15 was beautiful ending. another,
Sad.
another
Mhm.
pow, you just,
Yep.
just smashed to the ground at
Yeah,
the
the
end. And you
the
just
entire
say,
last act of that game
ah,
is
that moment when he goes up the stairs. I mean, come on. Oh, it's like, I was like, come on, and he just turns to his friends and he said something like, walk tall, my friends, whatever. And, they sort of salute him, and then you know
Right.
where he's going. And then, Final Fantasy X all over again. And, and you think it's beautiful. But, a little bit about what you just said about 13 and the games changing and everything else. I think that, again, games, they have to change. We can't expect that the games are going to stay the same. And because we change, I said this on Twitter before, people change. We as people, we change. We are different people than we were 10 years ago and 20 years ago and whatever. So the games are the same. And somebody who's going to enter a franchise at Final Fantasy 13, they're going to have completely different feelings towards the older games and towards the 15 as well. It's just like, because I always say to my friends, I said, when you take a game, you just take it and you kind of take it for what it is, treat it as an individual game. Never compare, never say this was like that before, this was like this now, or whatever. Just take it as an individual, like you would judge a person, right? So if you meet a person, you just look at them and you just say, I'm going to just judge them by the way that they talk to me, not looking at what came before, not thinking about his brother, for instance, right?
Correct.
Like it's his brother, right? So the games are the same. You kind of have to take it and just play it and then judge it on what you've experienced and walk away. And sometimes you would love it, and sometimes you would say, oh yeah, it's all right, but but that's just like, I just don't have this tendency to compare. I just don't have, because otherwise, like, other franchises are the same. You could sort of start comparing them, which Metal Gear Solid is better, or which Assassin's Creed is better, or whatever. And it's just, I think it sours the experience a little bit,
And I'll be honest, I was guilty of exactly what you just said. When 12 and 13 first came out, I did not like them at all. They changed everything that I was familiar with.
Yes.
Completely different. I didn't feel like the stories were as emotionally, I don't know. I wasn't connected with the stories as well. But I was guilty of it. And then I played 12 again when the Zodiac Age came out, 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago? When they released the remaster, and I loved it. I'm like, this game is fucking awesome. Like, 12 is a great game. I mean, it took me a while, and that's why I'm playing through 13 again, and I'm finding that I actually do like 13 a lot more. And I've always said this.
That's it. There is a lot of moments in the 13th, because the 13 is, again, we've got this, love story between Snow and Sarah. There's something going on. Then you've got your two sisters, So when you think about it, you've got. So when you approach it from that perspective, I think if you will find that there is a lot of connection there. So for example, if there were two sisters, if I had a sister, then I would look at it and I would definitely feel like a bit more connection. So again, but I think that they are beautiful. They are beautiful, and they're basically different.
I've said this about 13 forever. Like, 13 is not my favorite Final Fantasy by any means. It's actually one of my least favorite. But Lightning is probably my favorite character of all games. Like, I love Lightning. So
awesome. That's good. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, she's very good. Yeah, she's very badass.
Yeah, definitely.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
So, real quick, before we close out the show, top 3 favorite Final Fantasy games. What are they?
Okay.
And
top
why?
3.
And why?
You
Okay,
have
so
to pick 3. Don't give me any of this. Well, this one's tied with this one bullshit. We're not having top 3. Top 3, and that's
setting
it.
the ground rules.
Okay, so I think I have to say, obviously, Final Fantasy VIII is always number 1, right? So that's never changing, So number 2, I think it has to be Crisis Core.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Interestingly, yes, Crisis Core. It's just the story basically, the story of Zack, the way he was, the way it all sort of happened, and really touched me at the end.
Genesis was such a good character too.
That's what I mean.
Genesis.
And also, you look at Sephiroth from a different angle. right?
Yeah.
So we sort of, it's not this running around villain with this, that, and the other, but it's kind of like, this is what happened.
They
And
were
also,
like brothers. They were like family.
correct. And then also you learn about the history of the Cloud Sword and everything, and Aerith, Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, what a,
it's just what a game. And then, so obviously, so that one is 2, and 3 is gonna be 15. Yeah, 15 again. It's just beautiful gameplay. The world, the graphics, the story, the friendship between the guys. The whole the Noctis's kind of quest and the ending, and it was beautiful. Just beautiful. Blew me away. So these are my top 3.
All right.
that's a great list.
That's a good list.
For
I
sure. Agree with that. So
I just like that you picked the only one I played, so that's a great thing.
Well, the thing with Crisis Core too, not only you, Gus, I know a couple people that have played that and only that. I've never played a Final Fantasy game outside of that and love that game. So
It's solid. It's a really good game.
For sure.
especially for a PSP title.
Yeah.
So
I know we're going to close up here, but I think one of the things that I liked about it that really was just that it was action focused, and the same guy who directed Crisis Core was the same one who directed 15. So there's no turn based. I think the only time that you're waiting, there's like a RNG system where it's like a slot type system.
It's activating combat mode.
That's right.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. You hear that 10,000 times. It's just like enough of this activating combats. But yeah, it's good. It's interesting. It's different. It has a beautiful music. I mean, what else could you want? It's on PSP,
Exactly.
so we can travel around.
Right.
yeah.
That's it.
So-
And I bought PSP just so I could play that game. So,
Fair enough.
All right.
That's
same
not a bad
happened.
reason.
That's it. Same happened for me for Final Fantasy 3. I bought Nintendo DS just so I could play that title.
A real fan.
That's
Yeah,
a real
for
fun.
So before we close out, where can people find you online? Like you said, you have a presence.
Well, a small presence rather, but yes.
Getting
please.
bigger.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, but the most important thing that people would come, engage, and say hello to me on Twitter. So this is where I talk about games. This is where I talk about Final Fantasy. Come and say hello at Ulana Dabs. Very simple. ULANADABBS, and that is on Twitter. So yes, come on over if you want to talk games, say hello, and just appreciate Final Fantasy with me.
That's fair enough.
Awesome.
Yep. Thank you
Very good.
again for doing the show.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Ton of fun.
Yeah, it was interesting to have we talk about news and stuff like that all the time, but having that Final Fantasy topic I thought was really cool. Something a little different than what our normal formula is. So
Yes.
That's
Thank
very
you. Thank you for coming on board. It was really fun to have you and talk to you about Final Fantasy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a great pleasure meeting you and chatting about Final Fantasy. I mean, what could be better? It's fantastic Sunday.
You have to come on the show again sometime.
yes, definitely. You're
Oh,
always
it's pleasure.
welcome.
Anytime you feel like chatting Final Fantasy,
Yeah,
give me a shout.
absolutely.
Maybe we'll get some big news at E3 from Square, and we'll have to.
Maybe we'll have you on the Final Fantasy VII remake episode if it ever
Why not?
launches.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
There we go.
in a couple years when that thing actually maybe comes out.
Fingers
Yep.
crossed. Let's hope that it will be earlier than that.
It's kind of
Put it on
funny
the
because Ulana did touch on that, talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. She said, if eventually it comes out.
Right.
And of course, in a Final Fantasy fashion, we just straight off topic up completely and started talking about something else. Something else.
We've moved on to Square.
Yep.
That's it.
But yes, thank you, Lana, and thank you, Goose and Dalton, as always, for being here. And that's all we have for you on this episode. So we will see you next week here on the AEG show.